What's up, guys? Rivera here. In case you haven't noticed, and I'm sure if you're really paying attention and watching my vlogs daily, you have noticed that I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to race. One of the reasons that is because obviously I'm a person of color, so I see things that way, but I'm also a person of color that hasn't really let a lot of stuff hold me back, and I'm very used to having to navigate my way around racism because I'm from Arizona. So, I will often be very clear with other people of color that you shouldn't let these things hold you back, and there are certain ways that you can make it so it's a little bit easier for you to, I guess, stay alive, as dramatic as that sounds. I know a lot of times white people sometimes think that people of color are just making these things up or trying to make things seem harder than they are, and really, for a lot of us, that's not the case. I know a lot of times when you're dealing with people online, that's who's the loudest, is the dumbest, which is the same for a lot of white people. Like, there's the super racist white people that are usually the loudest online, and if we were to just go by that, we would think that white people were extremely racist. But the truth is that the average person is somewhere in the middle. The average person sees both sides, even when it comes to white people. Like, the average white person, I've noticed, acknowledges that there is racism, but also has some questions and don't always understand what it is people of color are reacting to, which is something that I 100% get, because I try to exercise patience in this way, because I know that sometimes people just aren't dealing with it, so they can't really relate. Like with me, I do stand-up, and I'm not trying to be full of myself on this, but I am good at what I do. So sometimes when people that aren't the funniest tell me about problems that they deal with, there's a part of me that feels like, yeah, that doesn't happen. But the truth is, it doesn't happen for me because I'm actually good at what I do. Where if you're struggling or you don't really know how it works or you're still trying to figure it out, then it's a whole different ballgame, and the way that you get treated is different. So that even happens when it comes to like people I deal with, like as far as bookers or managers of comedy clubs or people within the industry. Like, they'll be nice to me and talk to me with respect, where other people, they'll kind of treat like nothing. So when a person tells me they get treated like nothing, it would be easy for me to say that doesn't happen, because it doesn't happen in a lot of cases for me. But if I watch the way people that I'm around that are newer or haven't been around as long or just aren't as funny, because there's nothing wrong with saying that some people aren't as funny, it's easy for me to see at least a little bit of where what they're talking about. Sort of like when I'm talking to somebody and that person will ignore them because they don't know who they are, or what it is they're doing, or what it is they do. So it's kind of the same for me when it comes to race. You know, like sometimes if you're white and you're paying attention, you'll notice that there will be certain people, especially older people, people of certain generations, that'll completely dismiss your friends that are people of color and not deal with them at all. When I was growing up, I grew up in a smaller town in Arizona, and I remember that there, people were openly racist all the time. So these are people that are still, in a lot of cases, alive. They're much older now, but they're still alive. And what you forget is some people are still dealing with them. Some people of color are still dealing with those people. And while those people probably over the years have evolved somewhat, somewhere in there is that racism that I dealt with from them when they were younger. Well, now different people of color, a different generation, are dealing with them having those attitudes, at least to some degree still, and having to navigate their way around that. So then a person of color calls that out and says that they dealt with that, and then you, being a white person that knows that person, say, or has met that person, and they've always been nice to you, you're like, oh no, that's a perfectly nice man. He doesn't treat people like that. And they're like, yeah, because we're telling you he's racist. And then you're saying racism doesn't exist, and we're saying, like, yes, it does. So I get both of them, both sides, and I try to be as patient as I can. Sometimes I'm human. I'm human, so sometimes I do lose my patience, and sometimes I don't do the best on those days, trying to convey what it is I'm saying. Like the other day, I had a conversation with a guy, and I still haven't read his response to me, but we went back and forth. If you're watching right now, you know who you are. I'm just not saying your name because I don't want to try to throw you under the bus or anything like that. Because I feel like even though you weren't getting me and I wasn't really getting you, both of us were open to the conversation, which in a lot of cases is all I ask of people. Like, sometimes we both just need to step back because we're not getting each other. It's easy to say, you're just not getting me, but it's also not your job to get me, just like it's not my job to get you. But if we're both trying to make a positive change, if we both, even if we're angry at the moment, are trying to come to some sort of resolution or some sort of conclusion, even if it's just between us, to me, it is important sometimes to take a step back and say, can I see what it is you're saying? And then maybe I'll go back and read your words and see how it is you were trying to come at it. Then you do the same for me. And then hopefully we end up coming to some sort of understanding. And I know a lot of people say, like, arguing on social media is pointless. Well, name-calling on social media is pointless. Name-calling in any situation is pointless. But I've noticed throughout my time on social media, which, I mean, like, you know, I started off MySpace like everybody else. I was on MySpace, and that was my introduction to social media. And then Facebook, and Facebook was a little more argumentative, because if you remember MySpace, it was all very much like, hey, having fun, there's a party tonight. Like, people weren't really trying to argue about a lot of shit on MySpace. I'm sure there were those pockets, but for the most part, MySpace was like a fun, have a good time, meet friends, look at hot pictures, but they weren't as crazy as Instagram. But, you know, that's what MySpace was. It was more like good times based. Then we moved on to Facebook, and that's where people started arguing more and being more disrespectful with each other. But I noticed a lot of times I could have really good conversations with people, even if they were on the complete other side of the spectrum from me, as far as politics or sexual orientation or race or any of that stuff. Like, we could have some good conversations. And then last night, I watched a documentary called, I think it was called Meeting the Enemy, or it had another title, and then, like, Meeting the Enemy was, like, a subtitle. And it was so good, because this lady...
My name is Dia Khan. I'm an activist and filmmaker. I grew up in Norway, where white skinhead gangs terrorized our small Muslim community.
She was going behind the scenes. She was dealing with white supremacist groups. She was Muslim, and she was going behind enemy lines, I guess you could say, and hanging out with white supremacists to get to know them.
I joined the extremists on the front lines of the race wars in America. I wanted to see if I could understand their anger, to get to know the personal reasons why they are drawn to such hatred and division.
Fuck you!
They knew they were being filmed for a documentary, full on camera, everything. She was a brown lady. I'm not sure where specifically she was. I'm sure she said it somewhere in the documentary, but that part kind of got lost on me. Because to tell you the truth, if I'm being 100% honest, she mentioned that she was Muslim, feminist, whatever.
I am a woman of color.
Yes.
Yes. I am the daughter of immigrants. I am a Muslim. I am a feminist. I am a lefty liberal.
Now, when she said that, I looked at my boyfriend and I was like, okay, so this is going to be a lame point of view. Because a lot of times, when a person comes at it from that side, they're usually going to be super social justice warrior and, in my opinion, very closed-minded, just on the opposite side. So I was expecting this to really suck. But then, when I saw that she was really getting in there with the white supremacists and not disrespecting them, just trying to understand them and make the human connection.
What I want to ask you is, am I your enemy?
You're not subjectively my enemy, but what you are promoting will lead to the disappearance of my people and my culture. And I will tell you this, it annoys me tremendously when I'm told by some immigrant or a child of immigrants that the only reason my country is worthwhile is because people like them have come here. It's as if to say, my ancestors built a dung heap, and I don't doubt your goodwill, but your goodwill is objectively going to lead to the oblivion of my people. I'm sorry, there is no other way to see it.
And the white supremacist she was dealing with,
men who say they've lived lives of racist violence.
Nigger, prepare to burn. You've attacked our people, and now it's your turn. I've hurt people horrifically with my bare hands.
I've been to prison. I've kidnapped people. I've harmed people. I've done things that you would think I'm insane.
they were pretty hardcore, and they were from actual organizations and guys within the organization. So the people that you really want to deal with if you're doing this kind of thing.
I met neo-Nazis.
Jews and homosexuals, they should be exterminated, every single one of them.
And I sat down with the new leaders of the white nationalist movement, men from privileged and elite backgrounds.
We did it. We took it. We took it with force. We won.
Shame! Shame on all of you! Shame!
And she was getting to know them, and by the end of her relationship with them, like her shooting them because they had agreed to let her shoot them and go with her, she was at the protest. She was at the protest in Charlottesville, the one where Heather Heyer died, but she was like a mile away from that. So she was really, really in there.
I decided to meet people who think the white race is under threat and that I am their enemy.
Fuck you! Get a heart attack, nigger!
And what I appreciated about it was she was showing them the human side of her, and they were showing her the human side of them. And they were still using offensive terms at different points, not towards her, and they weren't being hostile towards her, but she was really just trying to get to know them as people. And with her trying to sincerely do that and get to know them as people, and at the same time interviewing them and asking them questions, and sometimes questions where there was a point, because like I said, I started off not liking this lady or thinking I wasn't going to like her. But there was a point during the documentary where I just felt like this lady is really brave. Like, she's really asking these guys the tough questions, but she's still being respectful about it. And you can see that they're getting agitated, and you can see that there's points where they probably want to punch her for asking these questions. Not to mention she's a woman, and she's Muslim, and she's brown, and they're not having her on a lot of levels. But they were open-minded enough to listen to her, and she was open-minded enough to listen to them. And I don't think the average American that I deal with is that extreme, like the white supremacist extreme. Like, I've dated a few white supremacists. Now, supremacist is the new manipulative. I can't pronounce it right now. But we're going to work through it, and I'm not going to edit this part out. But I've dated a few white supremacists, 2 to be exact. One when I was 19 years old, another one when I was 24, I think he was. His name was Dan, and he was a right-wing racial separatist. That's what he technically qualified as. And the other one, when he was younger, before I met him, had been a part of the Aryan Brotherhood. I was 19, and he was like 27 or something like that, and he had been in prison. And I've seen that people can change, but I've noticed a lot of times when people are either making the change or they're starting to be more open-minded, a lot of people are like, well, I would never talk to that person. I would never be able to communicate with that person or associate with that person. And to me, I feel like, no, we have to be open to people that have thought differently from us in the past, or else how are we going to move ahead and work together in the future? Like, that's the way I have to feel, and the way I have to handle things is because I'm older than a lot of the people that I see that are trying to actually, like, because people claim to try to be making change, but they're really not trying to make change. Like, making change also means making compromises and opening yourself up to hearing the way other people think. Like, that's the only way to make real change. Real change will never be made from saying, you now have to be my way and think 100% my way. That's not even the way it works. Even if you feel like there's certain things from your point of view that people really need to see and really need to respect and understand in order for you to move forward, you can still be patient about these things and wait for people to fully get a grasp of that, and in the meantime accept the progress that's actually been made. Like with me, when I was watching this lady and I was watching the white supremacists still use what she would consider offensive terms, and at one point they were one of them was throwing his propaganda out the window, you know, they had weighted them with rice plastic bags because it was raining, and it was like, you know, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic propaganda that he was throwing out of the window in Jewish neighborhoods. And she was in the car and she was filming it and talking to him, and she didn't appreciate that he was doing it and didn't think he should be doing it, but at the same time she was letting him do it as she was talking to him, as he was talking to her. Well, some people would say she's terrible for being around for that, but all he was doing was throwing out propaganda. It's just a piece of paper, which even he said that at a point. And the other thing was, at the same time she's doing it, he's making friends with a Muslim woman. So while he was saying he hated Jews worse than anybody else, I'm sure at some point he hated Muslims, and he probably doesn't have the highest opinion of women. But if he can extend himself enough to, by the point that she asked him, by the time that she got to the point where she asked him how he felt about her, he was like, I consider you a friend. If you were ever to call me and say you had a flat tire or that you were stuck, I would help you out. I consider you an actual friend. And then he admitted that, you know, he would like to have a friend, and or he likes having friends, and that, you know, it's nice to be able to share with people. And I think that that's where a lot of people come from with this. Like, a lot of people just have misguided opinions of other groups, and then the other groups meet them with the same hate, and nobody ever gets ahead. So I guess my point is, sometimes you'll see me talking to people or responding to people in comments where maybe you think it's pointless and I should just say fuck you to that person. And this goes from both sides, because I definitely get it from people of color, and I also get it from white people at different points. But I feel like if I try my best to keep an open mind and converse with these people, then hopefully we can form some sort of, even if it's online, friendship, or some sort of keep the lines of communication open, and then maybe one day that can expand out into their regular life, where they're more open to talking to a person of color or a person who happens to be gay, you know, or LGBTQ in whichever way. And then real change is actually made. So I don't think real change comes from beating it into people's heads or making people understand your way just by being like, you either take me on my terms or fuck you. I think there has to be a lot of compromise. And I'm going to include the name of that documentary in the description box. It's on Netflix, and I really thought it was good, and I hope you guys will check it out. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for today. I'm not talking about a current event, and I know that, but it's a vlog, and I can talk about whatever I want. If you guys decided to listen, I really do appreciate that, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not going to do editing on this one either. I think it's important for my stuttering and stammering just to come through. And I know some people have mentioned that. I appreciate the constructive criticism, and I will work on getting to the point and not having the ums and pauses. I try to edit a lot of that stuff out so you don't have to deal with it, but for right now, I'm still figuring out exactly how I want to do this, but I think sometimes it's important to show the real me unedited and not some version of what I'm supposed to be, or I think I'm supposed to be. I always appreciate you guys listening, however many of you listen. Please like, subscribe, and comment. I'm interested in your opinions. Have a good Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. Have a good Wednesday.